Tonight, the workshop is about painting on round surfaces. And in particular, I found this incredible box. Uh, this is 10 wooden surfaces, but they're not just a flat wood surface. They actually have a little bit of height to them. They're very nicely done. So this is not a plywood. It's a very good wood that works well for art because it doesn't bleed. If you're used to seeing those wood slices, which are wood slices, pine wood is notorious for leaching various types of oils and acids back into your painting and ruining your painting. But this kind of wood here, if you know what the kind of wood is, shout it out because for some reason it's left my mind. I'm looking to see if it says on the box here. Nope, it just says artist wood panel. But I want to say birch wood, but it's a kind of wood, this light colored wood like this, that's excellent because it's much less likely to bleed back through your artwork with acids. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but let me show you some of the artworks that I've done on these. So I bought that box of 10 super inexpensively. I have no idea how they can sell them that cheap, but this is a watercolor that I did on one of the panels, and it's a tropical watercolor. And then this is I used markers. So this is acrylic markers that I used on this one and did that kind of a cactus like look to it. Then this one I put gesso on. Do you see this right here, the white? So I put white paint on it. I covered the top and the side with white paint first, and then I did a painting on top of there of a pomegranate. And then the last one I want to show you here, I wanted some of that natural wood color to show through. So then I did this owl on it. Oh yeah, I used a little bit of copper paint so you can see the eyes right there. Ah, they're shining at you. But what I was doing with these different artworks was I was testing out different ways of preparing the surfaces of those wood panels in order to see what I needed to do. Hey there, Uncle Stephen, welcome in, welcome in. Oh, and I see Andre Garcia over on YouTube, and he said, is it plywood? It's not. I'm pretty sure it's a birch panel, but it's what artist panels are made from because if they used pine, like I said, pine can put different oils. It's much more likely to put oils through the wood. But this, I'm pretty sure these are birch panels. But if you ever look up an artist panel or a painting panel, they're usually this kind of wood here. Although what's here, you can tell is like pressboard, right? So you certainly wouldn't want to ever get that wet because what would happen? It would just swell up and fall apart, right? But the panel on the top would be fine. Now, some of the things that we're going to be using tonight while we're doing this project, because what we're going to do first is a project on some of the wood. I've prepared some of the wood surfaces with different surface preps, and I write on the back of them what it is that I put on them so that I know like what's going to work better for me. And then one of them we're going to do a quick watercolor on. So this is a travel watercolor set. We're going to do the watercolor. Then we're not going to do tonight, but I wanted to show you that if you have a set of acrylic markers. So for instance, this is a set of Sharpie markers, right? And I love this set because it has two different types of markers in it. Oops, there's some of my artwork in there. It has a brush tip marker and it has a bullet tip marker. So I like that there's a combination. Actually, I think I have a color chart here. Yeah. So you can see like the bullet tip colors and then the brush tip colors. So they're similar colors, but they're a little bit different so that you don't have duplicates. But it's nice that you have the ability to go back and forth between covering a large area with the brush tip and then the detail with the bullet tip. And for instance, this is a fish that I did using the markers on dark paper, right? And so I like that. Oh, hi, Craft Owl. Nice. Craft Owl said last night, Salmon's Girl said that I gave her inspiration for being on the artisan raid train. Yay! Thank you for that, Craft Owl. Yeah, I love working with you and with Salmon's Girl both. You guys are fabulous. But I wanted to show you that you can use the markers. Hey, Flower Gazer, welcome in, and go directly onto the wood. So you don't have to do any wood prep or anything. You can just paint right on the wood. But that's if you're using something like acrylic paint or acrylic markers like this. So it's a great project to give to kids. You give them one of these, you give them some acrylic markers, you let them go to town, right? And you don't have to worry about sealing the wood. That's what I did here. So this was done using those markers, the Sharpie markers on the wood. And so you can still see the wood grain. And afterwards, I sprayed it with a spray varnish because I wanted it to stay, I wanted the paint not to get damaged, right? That's why there's a slight shine to it because I sprayed it with a varnish. And but this is a fun type of project that you can do with the markers and these with kids. Now, the other thing is you're going to want to use acrylic paints. So I use tube paints. This is the Origin acrylics from the Pebeo Paint Company. Actually, I have their apron on as well. So they give me these paints to test out. When they first came out with the paints, they gave them to me and they were like, test them out, tell us what you think. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are awesome. Oh, so those are the paints that we're going to be painting with tonight when we do the acrylic part of that. So this was done with acrylics, the pomegranate, and the owl was also done with the acrylics, those same acrylic paints. Okay, so we are going to do an acrylic project tonight, but there's another brand of paint. This is the golden acrylics, and I also used this because I love this particular color. So yes, you can use any of your tube acrylics. You can even use your fluid acrylics. It's just these are thicker paints when you get them in the tube like this. The paints that come out of the little bottles tends to be more fluid, and that just means you're going to have to put more layers. That's all. That's the difference. And I like the texture that I get from the tube paints as well. Like, for instance, if you look here on the owl, you can see a lot of texture from the strokes there. And that's because I have a thicker paint that I'm working with instead of the fluid paint like in those little bottles. But you can do it with both. You can use the markers, the small bottles, the thicker paint, the inks, it's all good. All right. In terms of acrylics, this is one of the Pebeo acrylic markers. And what I like to do with this is you see around the outside here where it's black, but there's that little tiny bit there that's still not, doesn't have anything on it. That's because I took the black marker and I went around the edge and I only wanted it to go up to there because I wanted you to still see that beautiful wood edge, but I wanted to cover up all of this. This marker is amazing for that. And so any acrylic marker that you can get that has a big fat top to it like that can be great for just going around the edge super fast. It's amazing to do that. Let me see. I'm looking to see what else I have around me here. Of course, you're going to want to use some brushes. So I try to use brushes that are made for acrylics. In this case, you've got a brush that has nylon hairs to it. Now, this is a Royal and Langnickel brush line. And I love that they have this little cushion right here so that as you're painting, it's easy on your hands when you're doing acrylic painting. So they do make these with, wider and down to narrow and round ones as well. I know I have more. I just don't know where they are because I have so many brushes here. Another brush line that I really like is the Princeton brush line, but this is their select, they call it select line. And so I like these a lot for because they're a little stiffer. Right? And so I like the stiffer brushes for doing the acrylic paint work. A brush like this that's super soft, I don't like using for acrylics because it's going to be too soft. This is actually a watercolor brush. So, yes, there are reasons to use different types of hair for the brushes, and we're going to be using the type that goes, well, we're going to be doing a quickie little watercolor painting, so I'll use watercolor brushes for that. And then we're going to use this for the acrylic painting. Okay. Now, for this piece right here with the tropical flowers on it, I used a book, imagine, because I love books. And so I use this book as my inspiration, DIY Watercolor Jungle. So, like I said, don't worry about links to these products. I will put them in the description of the video on YouTube later tonight. So you'll have them for tomorrow. You can pop into the video, and it's DIY Watercolor Jungle. So I just love she does the leaves. She shows you how to do, I'm looking for one, like the banana leaves, for instance. And so here's watercolor painting some banana leaves, and then some of those gorgeous flowers. So, let me find the flowers. More bananas. Here's one, the tropical flowers, right? So I love these. I have these bird of paradise in my neighborhood. When I take a walk, I walk past them. They're so pretty. Hibiscus. There's the torch ginger that I used, right? For mine right here in this artwork. So this is a great reference for doing, if you're interested in doing those kind of tropical flowers. Of course, last week we were doing more wildflowers. So that was this book, Wildflower Watercolor, which I also rely on quite heavily for um, different types of flowers, if that's what I'm in the mood to paint. You just never know, right? I'm looking to see. Oh, okay. Before we work with acrylic paint, and even some watercolors, we're going to protect our hands. So this is Winsor& and Newton Art Guard. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that or not, but if you paint a lot, it can be handy to put a what's called a barrier cream on your hands. So now I've covered my hands, and if you have fingernails, what I do is I put some in my hand like this, and then I use my fingernails and I go around. Oops, I have to put some in this hand now. Um, because that gets it underneath your fingernails as well. And then when you go to wash your hands, it is super easy to get all the paint off. It just cleans right off your hands. So again, that's called an hand barrier cream, or in this case, it's Winsor& Newton Art Guard. So when I work with acrylics or I work with oil paints, that's what I like to do, is put a barrier cream on my hands first. So if you go to wash your hands, you need to reapply the barrier cream, okay? Because it's just going to wash off, which is great because all the paint just washes right off your hands. Woohoo! Love that. Okay, let me find a good place to put that where I'll remember where it is. I only have a little work area right here, right? But things tend to get lost. Oh, excellent. Watercolor, etc. said she used my link on YouTube. So in the description of the video on YouTube, there's a link to pop over to Whatnot, where I have my artworks for sale in there during the show. And I also have some art supplies like little watercolor sets that you can customize, that kind of thing over there. And when you join Whatnot, with my link, they will give you, I think it's $15 to spend on the platform because Whatnot is an auction platform. So isn't that cool? Well, auction plus on Whatnot, I have a shop, and so you can also peruse my artworks on the shop. So I invite you to do that. All right. This is what I used to prep my panel. That's, you see the white right there. So this is called gesso. Gesso is an acrylic primer. It's called a primer, and you put that on before you do your acrylic painting. And so this happens to be a white one. But if you want the wood to show through, which I really like the wood, and if you have the pieces of, yay, yes, $15, awesome. Um, if you have a piece of the pine slice, then you have even more rings that will show back behind there, and I think that's such a cool look. So what I use for that is something called clear gesso. So this is my favorite, the Liquitex clear gesso. And that's exactly what I did here to prepare this surface for the owl was I used clear gesso on here, and that primed it and got it ready for acrylic painting, and then I was able to do all of my painting on there. Now, you you do not have to prep your panels. Like I said, you don't have to prep them. I prep them because I'm creating artwork to sell. But if you're going to have fun and maybe give this to kids and let them go to town on these little wood panels, then don't worry about it. Don't worry about priming it at all. I do it because I want to have the paints, or I want to have the paint stick well to the surface. I don't want to have any of that acidic bleed through from the wood. And I want to be able to confidently sell them and know that people are going to be able to enjoy them for the next, whatever, 20, 30, 50, 100 years, right? So that's my objective. You absolutely don't have to do that. But I do want to kind of show you my process. And what I was doing was experimenting with the different coatings to see what I like best. Now, before I put any coating on, actually, there's one more coating. Let me show you. So this is by Daniel Smith, and this is a watercolor ground, they call it. It's in the transparent color. So the water, a ground, this is a ground, gesso is a ground, right? There's the clear one, there's the white one, this is a clear one, but this one is specifically made for watercolor. So if you put this on your surface, you can then paint the surface with watercolor. So this is a clear gesso because I wanted to see the wood through it. Um, Specific for watercolor, and then so I put that on the wood, and then this way I could paint with watercolor and it accepted it. Isn't that cool? So it's really handy to have these watercolor grounds. So Daniel Smith makes it, and Golden. Remember I mentioned the Golden paint earlier? Golden also makes a watercolor ground. So that's something you prep the surface with before you paint. And that way you can paint watercolor on all kinds of different things, which is really cool. Now, before I put these grounds on my wood, I wanted to seal the wood because I want to be sure that I don't get that surface induced discoloration coming back up through my paint sometime down the road. Yes, you can even get surface induced discoloration. That's those oils and acids coming up from the wood because wood is not acid free. Okay, wood has acid in it. And so before I even put the gesso on, because I don't want that acid to come up through the gesso, I seal the wood. So you can buy a polyacrylic sealer in a spray or in a little pot at the hardware store if you want to do that, and you can seal your wood that way. Now, I use a product from Golden, and it's called GAC 100. GAC 100. Like I said, on YouTube, I'll have a link to all of these products. Hey, bonsoir. Um, somebody said bonsoir. Okay. Jay over on YouTube says, "Can I explain the reason why I would choose water-based versus oil-based paints to go on to um, these panels, these wood panels?" You can use either the water-based paints or oil-based paints, either one. Um, you just have to know how. I think ahead to how am I going to um, am I going to frame this? Maybe it's a panel without the edge and I want to frame it, or I want to put this into a shadow box or something. For instance, if I used oil pastel, I could easily seal this. I could use the same acrylic sealer, whether and the prep, so that's the gesso. So I would seal it first with either this or a polycrylic or something from the hardware store. I like to use Golden's GAC 100 as a sealer for wood, raw wood, because it is an artist grade product. But you don't have to do that if you don't want to spend the money to get the artist grade product. You don't have to. You can just get a spray from the hardware store, wood sealer, done. And then you put your base on. This is the white base, and this is the clear base, right? And after that, you can put any oil-based product on top of it that you want. Um, Having an oil-based paint on top of the wood does not stop the wood from that acid seeping through and discoloring your paint. Okay. So, um, whether you choose the oil-based paint or you choose the water-based paint, you're still going to want to seal that wood up because otherwise the wood down the road could seep that acid back through. I was looking the other day at some old paperwork and there was a folder, and this was from the 1980s, right? I was looking at some paperwork, and the folder, the manila folder, is made from wood pulp and it has acid in it. So it was not acid free. And when I opened it up, the first page of paper that was inside there was all discolored because the acid that was in that folder, because that folder was made from wood pulp, paper from wood pulp, had the acid had leaked into the papers, that first paper inside there. Okay. So even though it looks like, oh, that should be fine, it'll be fine if you wanna do this and paint the wood and have it for a couple of Christmases and enjoy the artwork that way. But if you want to create artwork, whether it's water-based or oil-based on top, um, that you want to sell or you want to give to someone and have it last for a long time, you're gonna want to seal the wood first and then put your primer on, okay? So I hope that that helped, Jay, to give you an answer. Yes, said, "Oh, nice, thank you." You're welcome. You're welcome. Because I love oil-based paints too. As a matter of fact, a lot of people paint oil paint on panels. They paint on wood panels. If you get a raw wood panel, you need to seal that wood panel first and then put your base on it, whatever primer you want to use, and then use your oil paints on top. A lot of people do that because the wood is not flexible, and so your oil paints are less likely to crack over time, right? Because when you have oil paints on a canvas, I was looking at one of my pieces here in my house earlier today, and I'm like, "Oh, huh, look, there's a little crack." Well, that's because it's on canvas, and it was a thick application of oil paint. It was a piece that I had bought in New York, from a New York artist. It wasn't a piece that I had done, but they had just taken a piece of linen and stretched the linen over some stretcher bars and put a layer of gesso on it and then painted their oil. But of course, it's flexible, so it was getting cracks in it, right? That's why a lot of people like to paint oil paint onto wood like this. But as an artist, I would still seal it with GAC 100 and then put my um, primer on it. Okay. So, um, and then after it's done, I let it, like this watercolor one, I let fully dry for 24 hours. And then I use a wax based, let me see, is it right here? There you are. I use a wax based sealant. This is Jacquard, Dorland's wax medium. And I put that on over top of the watercolor. So I can actually take, oops, where's my little dropper? I can actually take water and put it on this watercolor and it just comes right off. It's not going to affect it. It's not going to bother it. And that's because I sealed it with Dorland's wax. So you can seal your watercolors with Dorland's wax, and that's what I did here. So now this is waterproof, even though it's a watercolor painting. Woohoo! And then the other thing that I did to seal the acrylic ones was I used, it's usually, you can either brush on a varnish over top of your acrylics or you can spray it on. And so I use this Krylon UV so it can be in the sunlight. Archival varnish, which works. This is a good one because it works for acrylic, watercolor, oil pastel, colored pencil, and oil paints. So I like this one as a good all around varnish. This one happens to be the gloss. I think they also have it in satin. Okay, so these are sealed. I put 2 coats of the spray on them yesterday so that they'll be sealed and they are ready to go. They're ready to be sold. Let me put these preparations goodies away. And I'm just looking to see if there's anything else that I need to tell you about. I'm probably going to use a pencil to draw a design. So that's what I did earlier for the owl. Before I went and painted the owl, I actually drew the design with a pencil, just a graphite pencil. And the nice thing is the acrylic goes right over top of it and you can't even see where the pencil was. But even if you could see where the pencil was, that's okay. We're allowed to do that as artists. It's all right to do sketches on your surfaces first. So what we're going to do then now is go over top of the table and actually paint some of these goodies. What I've done here, like I said, first I used the GAC 100 medium from Golden. See, I wrote a note right on here for myself because you don't always remember everything, right? It says coat raw wood with this, then gesso, or then put matte medium, either one on there. So it's okay to write on your labels, yo. So you remember what things are for, right? Yeah. So what we're going to start with is we are going to start with doing a watercolor. And so in order to prepare my surface, I use the GAC 100 first. And then you can see here I wrote watercolor ground. So what that means is that I took this Daniel Smith. First, I sealed it and left it overnight with the GAC 100 to seal the wood. I did 2 coats of that. And then I did the Daniel Smith watercolor ground. So the cool thing is either Golden or Daniel Smith have a watercolor ground that you can put on a surface, whether it's paper, whether it's wood, whether it's metal, whether it's plastic, whatever it is. And then that makes the surface able to be painted on with watercolors. Isn't that cool? I just think it's so cool. I used to tell my students that when I had my big teaching studio, I used to say, there's a medium for that. So just remember that there's a medium for that. Okay. When it comes to painting, usually there's some sort of medium available for whatever it is that you want to do. Okay. So just bear that in mind. I'm trying to give myself a little more room here. Let's see. Okay, good, 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 good. So I put watercolor ground on here. Now, the interesting thing with the watercolor ground is you have to leave it for 24 hours. It needs to dry at least 24 hours, okay? Before you're going to go put watercolors on top of it. So here we've got the This is just a travel watercolor set from Christy Rice. I love Christy Rice. If you're not familiar with her, she's an amazing artist. And so she makes some of her, this is her own palette that she designed. It says making art for joy's sake. Isn't that cute? So we've got our watercolors. Normally, if I'm going to paint with watercolor, I start out by spraying it. Now, if I did not seal this one, it would be a problem that I was working with water around it, right? Because the watercolors can be reactivated with water. That would be a disaster. But because I've sealed this with the Dorland's wax, it's now that water won't affect it at all. I don't have to worry about it. It's fully sealed. Okay, so that's very helpful. So let me think. I believe we were going to do. I was going to do a floral here. Actually, I think I'll do something. Let me see. Let me see. So I'm going to use this smaller brush. Wow, I've got paint all over it. So this is the Princeton Velvet Touch round, a size 4. I'm going to get it wet to start. So I have my water over here. Ooh, I better have a paper towel in hand. I always do if I'm going to paint. So let's see. I really like the doing lavender. So let's start out with lavender. You're going to want to look at your surface and see, gee, is there maybe if it's one of those pine rings, pine slices, it could have a really beautiful set of rings, and you want to turn it until you get what you think would be helpful in terms of a background. Okay, because with the watercolor, my objective is not to cover all the wood, right? You see how some of the wood is showing through there? So that's what I want to do. This is a cobalt violet that I'm grabbing here that I added to Christy Rice's set. Christy Rice's set is this side and this side, and then I added all the paints that are in the middle. So I was like, I like this color and this color and this color. Ay. So I added to it. So we're going to do um, it's going to be a couple of layers. So usually when you're doing watercolors, you start with your lighter layer first, and then you move into your darker layers. So I'm going to start with a lighter, and we're doing a lavender plant. So I like the lavender because of the way it's sort of spiky. And when I visited France before, my father-in-law used to live in France. So we would go over there and visit, and the lavender fields are just so beautiful. So if you have watercolor and paper, you may want to follow along. I don't know if any of you out there went ahead on my website, which is dietzart, dietzart.com. On my website, I ahead of the workshop, there's an events page, and on the events page ahead of the workshop, I give a list of what we're going to be painting with. So if you wanted to follow along, then you would have the information on the materials that we would be using. Okay, so that can be helpful. And you see how that's just taking right to the surface, just like that. I love it. Um, Now we're going to go a little bit darker. This is one of the Christy Rice colors here. And if you want to see what it looks like, these travel palettes have a little mixing area right here, so you can pull your color off, see what it looks like. If it's not dark enough, I can just grab a little bit of another color here and darken it up. So I just took a darker blue and added it to the purple to get a little bit deeper. So now this is where you can come in and build in some more deeper color. So I started with the lighter color. Oh, thank you, watercolor, etc. So I often will do that with the. I'll start with the the lighter color and then come in and just put a little bit of the darker at the bottom. The cool thing about lavender too is if you just make little hearts, that's kind of the shape of the flowers of the lavender, and I love that. Okay, so we're just going in here, we're adding that little bit of extra darkness so that it gives it a little bit of extra dimension, right? And there's one other thing I'm going to do to add a little bit of dimension, and that's come in with some the green, right? Because that's just the flower part of it. Now we need to do some green. So I have a couple of interesting greens here. This is from the Christy Rice set. It's kind of an olive looking green. So we'll just now I like she also in her set has a turquoise. That's what I'm dipping into now. So when you put the two together, the turquoise and the olive green, you get this beautiful light green that's perfect for something like this. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to put the stalk right here. Now, with the lavender, you don't just put the stalk at the bottom, you put a little bit inside it too, up as it goes up, because those little flowers are actually being held by little bits of the green. So I'm just throwing a little bit of green in here and a little bit of green in there, right? So that's why I love lavender because it's so fast and easy to do. Oh my gosh. Yes. Um, okay, so I'm actually going to, what are we going to do next? I want to do something pink, pink, like, but like red, red. When I say pink, I mean more of a red pink. So let's grab some red here. This is from the Christy Rice set. Huh. Where am I gonna put it? Hey! I always have, that's the issue, right? Like, where am I gonna put it in order to, work with it? Okay, there's sort of like a fiery red orange, right? Because I had some orange in there before. So, what can we put in here? I'm just gonna do little, um, oh, something that's sort of like a, poppy poppy flower, right? Or something like that. So a poppy is just sort of it's got some they're actually pretty easy to do. Once you that's the nice thing about working from a book like this, the wildflower watercolor is the way that um, they break down each one of these flowers, and it just makes it so much easier to know what to do. And I am a proponent of if you need to, y'all turn your surface, okay, in order to get a better angles for your arm. Okay, that's one right there. Let's do maybe another one looking off from the side this way. This one is just going to be from a side view. And if you were looking at just each stroke, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's like nothing. But when you put it together with the green and the little filler flowers and everything around it, then it looks amazing. Okay, let's see. I think I probably need to put a something over here as well. So let's do another one, maybe looking over this way, looking up like that, but back in the back in the beyond. Okay, there we go. So that's a good start, right? I just want to show you how on these little, this is, they call it a 10 centimeter panel, wood panel. Let me show you the box again if you weren't here earlier. It's just wooden painting frame. They call it round 10 centimeter, 10 packs. So 10 centimeters is about 4 inches across, 4 inches diameter. Okay. But I'm not painting directly on the wood. I prepared the wood first with two layers of GAC 100. Hey, yeah, hi, Hick Life. So it's sealed. And then I used a watercolor ground to make it um, ready to receive watercolor. And that's why it's just juicing up the watercolor so nicely. Oh, So beautiful. Okay, now we're gonna do some yellow in here because I want to have like little buttercups or something in the background. Let's see, there's now Christy Rice has this neon yellow in here, which I really love because I put this standard like permanent yellow in. Okay, she didn't have that in there. She had this bright yellow, Christy Rice. But I added the permanent yellow, but I like dipping back into the one that she included, which is that vibrant neon yellow, because then I get a really bright yellow color. So I'm just going to put little sort of filler flowers in here with that. So they're just little, I need more water, more water. So just little filler flowers like that. And that is really one of the beautiful things about watercolor is you can just, well, impressionism, because that's really what I'm doing here is just being very impressionistic. Let's put another yellow one right here and some more yellow. I like using yellow next to the purple because yellow and purple are opposite each other on the color wheel. And so they work really well next to each other. So just some yellow dots. Oh, thank you. Relaxing to watch me paint, huh? I appreciate it. Okay, let's see. What else? What else? What else? Ah, that's why I like looking at other people's reference pictures. Like, how did they put theirs together, right? Because then that helps me to come up with other ideas. Okay, I'm actually going to go this direction. So I've got one facing down like that. Okay, so that's getting me somewhere. Now I actually want to put a little bit more of the purple. So we're going to go back into that. What do they call this? It's a Winsor Newton color. This one right here, manganese violet, I think it's called. But I like to use that as it's kind of a cross between a pink and a purple, right? So I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller because I want it to look like it's kind of back in the distance, right? Instead of being right up front. So I'm just making this one a little bit smaller, but it's a little bit of lavender back in the background. And the interesting thing, you have a full store of art. How long have you been painting? Hick Life asked. Over 20 years I've been painting. So what I have in my store on Whatnot right now is about art from about the last 5 years. So you can imagine I have an entire storage unit full of art right now. Larger, like large pieces, smaller pieces, framed pieces, unframed pieces, pieces that are on canvas, pieces on wood, pieces on paper. Oh my gosh, I have so much. That's what happens when you're a lifetime. Well, I wasn't always a lifetime painter, but yeah, I've been a painter for about 20 years. Okay. So there, I'm just putting a little bit of the purple out in the background there. And I'm going to come in with my dark again because, but I don't want it to be as dark. Things that are in the distance are generally lighter, right? Ah, Hick Life says, how am I doing here on Whatnot? I've sold a bunch of pieces of artwork on Whatnot. I appreciate the community on Whatnot that pitches in and buys art. I have art of many different sizes on Whatnot that are it's interesting because often artists buy other artists' work, and I appreciate that. But I've also had people who said, "Oh, it's my husband's anniversary, our anniversary or my husband's birthday." And so they'll ask me to personalize something for them. I like to make affordable art here on Whatnot. So I also have greeting cards, both original artwork on greeting cards and um, prints. So, for instance, all of these that I created for this workshop, I also have prints for all these. These are the originals, but later after the art workshop, there I'll have an auction and I'll be selling the originals and the prints of the designs that I make. But I like to, for the artist community on Whatnot and on YouTube, I like to share um, kind of my process, right? Some of my process. So right now I've got a bunch of yellows and a bunch of reds, and I need to start putting some more greens in there, right? So this is right, the color I'm dipping into right here is called Cologne Bridge Green, and it's a signature color from Schminke, and it's very difficult to find anymore because they've already kind of sold out on it. Oh, you're welcome. Hick Life says, appreciate the education. It's my pleasure. I've been teaching since I was 16 and I'm old. So that's a long time. Okay, so since the yellows had a chance to sort of dry, I can now come right back over top of it. And I'm just creating little stems here, right? Never old, only oh, I like that. I'm very well seasoned. Yes, that is the truth. You got that right. Whoa. Okay, so I'm bringing this one in so you can see here. I like the Cologne Bridge green as sort of a almost a blue green, and I love that. So, and then I'll just do this one right here like that. Can you see? You start to build the you want to leave yourself plenty of room. That's why I didn't put too many flowers in, right? Um, you can always go back and add more, but it's not always easy to remove or take away, right? So I'm going to say that these are coming from over here, and this one is attached to that one. There we go. So we've got that in there. I try to use different greens for each one of the different types of plants. You don't have to, but I like to because it kind of differentiates the stems for the different flowers. Now this one in the background here, I'm actually going to add a little bit of yellow to it because I want the green to be slightly lighter since it's further away, right? So here we go. Just bringing this one down. There it is. And I'm going to pop a few little green bits in here. There you go. Can you see that? Ever tried the backwards painting method on glass? Um, I'm very familiar with it because I grew up in Asia where they have those beautiful snuff bottles, and the snuff bottles are painted with 1 to 3 horse hairs, right? On a brush. And the horse hairs are curved on the brush. And so they go, I've seen it done but I've never done it, where they reach inside. You have to think backwards because the dots and the things that you're putting in first, you're going to see it on the glass, but you have to go from the very top of what it is that you're designing all the way back. So, of course, your background is done at the end and not at the beginning. Yes, I get it because I've seen it done and when I lived in Asia. Okay, so I'm going to pick some other sort of green. Let's see, maybe I'll mix something here. This is Cascade Green from Daniel Smith, and I'll mix some of that yellow in with it. Let's see what we get. Ooh, yeah, nice and punchy, punchy, nice light green. So I'm going to use that for my, what are these called? Poppies. I really like to paint poppy pods. I do that a lot. I like poppy pods. You'll see those in a lot of my artwork. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Sometimes you end up with little bits coming down like this, right? And then the stem. So there's like that. Hey, Richard Martinez. Oh, thank you, Hack Life. Thank you, thank you. Okay, and then this one as well, we're looking at it from the side. So I'm doing this here, and then we're going to bring this in. Okay, so we've got a little bit of that. Now, I can use black watercolor, although I have a little tiny bit of black watercolor that I put in here, or I can always go back in with a pen and use a pen, right, to add those black details. But I just got a nice set of golden maple detail brushes. You see the top of that is real tiny. So let's try to put some of the black in with that. So Christy Rice doesn't have any black in her set, but I added a black here, a Mars black. So I've got some black watercolor on there, and I'm just going to use this teeny tiny little brush. See, the problem with the small brushes is they don't hold a lot of water, and it's easier to use them with acrylic paints than it is to use them with watercolors because you have to constantly be refreshing the water, which is fine. You just have to know that that's sort of, if you're going to use one of these little teeny tiny brushes, it's just what we have to do, right? Right? Because don't they have a lot of, yee, and then some little dots. Let's see if I can get some little dots on there. That's another thing that these brushes are good for, is the little tiny dots. Okay, well, we're getting there. So this is an idea of what you can do with these wood rounds if you want to put watercolor on them. So if you're a watercolor painter, don't think that you only have to paint on water. If you use watercolor grounds like this one from Daniel Smith or the one from Golden Paints, you can do watercolor paintings on wood just by prepping the wood with GAC 100 from Golden, and then put your watercolor ground on. And then you see how vibrant the colors are? They're nice and bright on that background. I like this birch wood because it is a light wood like that. And then the last thing that you do when everything is dry, I usually give it 24 hours overnight to dry. Then I will come back with the Dorland's wax by Jacquard, Dorland's wax. And I will have links to this in the description of the video on YouTube. Hey, the creative Graham, welcome in, welcome in. Um, what I do after it's fully dry is on the wood, I like to just take my finger, yeet, just take my finger right in there and I just uh, put it around that way. If something, for some reason, one of the paints is going to want to smear a little bit, you can catch it right away. I find if you're using a cloth to apply it, you often will smear some of the paint, um, and then be like, "Oh my gosh," and it's almost too late. You've already rubbed it all in, right? So I use my finger and the Dorland's wax on that. So we're going to set this aside. Of course, I would work on it more. I would add um, more filler flowers and more filler grasses to that until um, it's done. Kind of like with this one, I put some of the palm fronds and some tropical leaves in the background in order to finish it. And then I put the wax on it. And then this one, I used an acrylic marker. So this is an acrylic marker. And let me show you that real quick, where you just take the acrylic marker. I love these. Aha. Now I need something to, let's just use this. You want to make sure that the paint is flowing. And then the nice thing here is that you can just use the marker and go right around like this. And it's a lot easier to go around the side and have more control when you're using a marker, right? Yeah, so much better to use an acrylic marker of some sort. This is the Pebeo 15 millimeter marker, but also Posca makes markers like this, the big wide ones. And I'm sure there are other companies that make them as well, but this is the water-based acrylic, and I like using that on the side here. Now, I personally did seal the side with GAC 100 before putting the paint on because I wanted to seal this particle board up before I put a water-based paint on it. Okay, so that's what I did here. Oh, oh, am I getting black paint everywhere? No, thankfully it dried already. Yay. Okay, so let me put this one away. This one's actually available for sale tonight. So if you are on Whatnot and you're interested in this piece, you can just go into the catalog at the bottom of the screen and find that. Okay, so I'm going to set this one aside. I will finish that later and I will show it to you next week at next week's workshop. Um, what I want to do now is I want to show you these are prepped the same way with the GAC 100. So I sealed the wood first, and then this is white gesso primer that I put on it. And then this one was the clear gesso. So that is this one right here from Liquitex Clear Gesso is on this one. I really like when the wood shows through myself. I love the using the clear gesso. So I'm actually going to work right on top of here. How about that? Eek. There we go. Now I see some little spots on here. Sometimes that happens, right? Stuff gets in your paint. So there's a little tiny spot right there. So I'm gonna just make sure that it's in a place where I'm going to put paint over top of it, right? All right, now let me make sure I have a paper towel in my hand for doing the acrylic paint work. So I thought we would do a pumpkin. Uh, I am like obsessed with these blue pumpkins. Lately, I've seen a couple of people painting blue pumpkins. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. Now, wait a second. I'm just looking for a pad of something to cover the surface with. Hold on just one second while I get one. I have lots of paper here next to me. There we go. Okay. So this is palette paper right here. It's something you can squeeze out your acrylic paint on. You can see I've had some acrylic paint on there already. So let me just that aside. I'm going to move the gesso off the table because we don't need the primer anymore. Oh, by the way, this one that has all the white on it, there are tons of videos on YouTube of people doing winter scenes. So, like little landscapes and winter holiday type things on these little round panels. So, I invite you to, you know, later take a look on YouTube for round painting, and you're going to find all kinds of really cool stuff. Love it. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to put the one that has the white on it away, and we are just going to focus on using acrylic paint for right now. Just put that there. So to do the pumpkin, I like this color, but I like this shape, right? These are images from Pixabay, which is a royalty-free website. And so you can use these for your inspiration. And I'll have a link in the description of the video for Pixabay. Let me put these away. I have two waters here. One was for the watercolor, and now I'm gonna use a different one for acrylic. So for the acrylic, I'm gonna work with um, the brush like I showed you earlier, the Royal and Langnickel brush. And what I like to do, let's use a pencil first and just, oop, You could use a pencil or you could use a pen, whatever you're more comfortable with. But what I'm doing is I'm looking at this pumpkin. And like I said, I like the shape and I like the fact that it's on a piece of wood. So let's just start with the top goes over here, right? And then it comes down like this. The cool thing is on this wood, if you make a mistake, you can just erase it. See there? It's super easy. Um, and so I'm just going to do this like this. And this one comes around a little bit more like that. And then we've got part of the pumpkin over here, another part of it here. And then it comes down and around. Has an interesting shape there. And then over here, what I like over here is that it goes up a little bit. So I like things like this that are uneven. Okay, also coming down like that, but then there's a little bit more here. There we go. You don't have to be too exact because you're actually going to be using acrylic paint right over top of it. You just want to get a feel for where your um, where everything is. Oh, we have something here and something here. We have one that comes here and another one that comes over here, right? One that sort of comes here like this. These. There we go. So that's how I would do a quick sketch on there. And then I'll just get this little bit of gray off of there. If you have a pencil that has like too much, maybe it had too much graphite, you can use a putty eraser. This is called a kneaded eraser, right? Like that. And so a lot of people who draw use kneaded erasers like this. And what a lot of people will do is they'll just come back in with the kneaded eraser and they'll pick up some of that graphite. So I'm going to show you here in just a second that as I'm doing this, I'm picking up some of that graphite so that it's not quite so dark. You see there? But since we're going over it with acrylic, it's not as critical, but that's more for watercolor. People do that. But some people like a lighter line. And now I'm just going back over the wood grain with the end here and picking up some of that excess, um, the excess graphite that was on there. Nice. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. I actually might want to make this just a little bit bigger, like bring this up a little bit more and bring this over just a little bit more to use up more of the real estate that we have there. And then this can come up over here. There we go. So I'm just trying to use up more of the space that's on there. There we go. Nice. See? So I just decided after lightening it, I wanted to adjust it a little bit. Okay. Yay. Now I'm going to go in with a light color. Um, so a white, but I don't want the white to be too white. So this is you can get your paint in tubes or in pots. So you can see I'm almost done with this one. Ah, and I'll just pull out some of the white. Remember, I'm working on top of a um, palette paper, right? So I can just put my paint right out on the palette paper. And then if I need more later, I can just grab more. All right. Hey, Now I'm going to set my picture up over here so I can kind of see it, but it's out of the way a little bit. All right. So let's grab a brush, and I'm going to get the brush wet because I only want a little bit. I mean, I want some of the lines to show back through. All right. But I just want to get some of the area kind of light before I paint on it with a different color. But because I left those pencil marks there, I can see through it. So I make sure my brush is wet so the paint flows well and I can still see through it. Okay. Yee. But that'll give me a base to work from. Nice. See how you can see through that? Yeah. But it's giving you a nice sort of base to start from. There we go. A little bit more there. Perfect. It's looking good. I'm gonna cover that over. I'm covering over some of those lines and even the stem. I'm going to come in here and put some white over top of that stem. I'm going to leave a little bit of wood showing so I know where the stem meets the pumpkin. Okay, just like that. So that's kind of, I call it whitewashing it, right? So you have an idea of where it is that you want to put your lines and your color. So I'm going to start with um, a smaller brush like this. This is that Princeton Velvet Touch #4. You can use them for watercolor, but you can also use them um, for acrylics. So I'm looking, I have this beautiful turquoise blue, and I also have a phthalo emerald. I have a really nice dark color. Oh, you know what I want to use for the dark color? I think I want to use this purple. Oh man, I'm late. Hi, Salmon's girl. We're doing we're doing a blue pumpkin on the wood panel, and we're using acrylic paint. So what you missed is I drew on the wood panel. Earlier, I discussed Salmon's Girl how to prep the panel before painting. Okay, so you did miss that part, but you can go back and watch that part, of course, on YouTube. And this panel was prepped with a sealer. So I used Golden's GAC 100 to seal it. And then I put something called clear gesso. So gesso is a primer for acrylic painting, and I put 2 layers of clear gesso on it as well. And then I drew on it with a pencil. So this is a Blackwing. Which one is it? It doesn't say which type of Blackwing it is, but it's a nice dark graphite pencil. So that when I put the whitewash, so that's using white acrylics with some water, then I was able to get the you can still see the lines through it, right? Oh my gosh, you're remodeling your bathroom. Ah! Okay, so we're gonna now use the Princeton Velvet Touch, and I'm gonna take some of this purple because purple and blue look good together, right? And I'm gonna put in the shadow lines for the pumpkin. Why not? Right? I need a dark color, so let me just come in with the purple. The nice thing about what I say is there's no crying in acrylics. Okay, no crying in acrylics. Why? Because you can always just cover up the layer that you might have, felt like you messed up. Thank you for sharing, Salmon's Girl. I appreciate it. Now, I'm not going to put a dark line on the very outside because there's no shadow there on the outside. I'm going to use the shadow where the sections come together. So I'm going to put some of the purple in here. And don't worry about it. You can always cover it up if I go, man, you know what? I don't like that purple under there. It doesn't matter. It's acrylics. We can just cover it up. Okay. No crying in acrylics. I'm going to have to write a book and put that in there. TM. Right? TM. Oh, all right. There we go. So we've got, I'm just using the purple to um, define the various sections of the pumpkin. Okay, that's all I'm doing here. I just need a dark color of some sort. And I'm gonna come around in here like that. Okay, see how I'm just sort of building the shape and putting the areas in where there would be shadows. All right, so you can do this slowly or you can do it quickly. The way that if I want to do something a little more quickly, you know what I do? I'll just use a bigger brush. Okay. If you want to cover an area more quickly, just use a bigger brush. And then here, so I'm just bringing that purple in wherever I'm going to have a shadow. Okay. And what color was that? It is ultramarine violet. This is the Origin Acrylics line from Pebeo. They gave me their whole line of paints. Woo woo! Thank you, Pebeo. Wow. And so that's been very helpful. But I love the paints anyway. They work really well. Okay, there's a little bit of shadow that's going to be right at the base of where the stem is, right? This is just giving me an idea for my placement of where my shadows. Also, when you have a stem that curves like that, you have to when I look at an artwork, I'm like, okay, where's the light coming from for this piece of artwork? If the light is coming from over here, then I'm going to have shadow over here, right? So I'm going to make that executive decision right now that I've got light coming from over here. Which means my shadows on this side are going to be a little bit more deep over on this area. And my shadows, I'm still going to have shadows here because that kind of separates the sections, but they're going to be a little bit lighter on this side. Okay. And that's why I'm putting a little bit more purple on this side of the stem because it's just I'm reminding myself there's going to be a shadow there. Okay. Ay, quick, quick and easy. Okay. So now actually, I am going to take a little bit of the purple and put it out here. Why not? Sometimes it's weird. There's like a little flash of darkness on the edge where it meets the sky. So I am going to go ahead and just outline the whole thing. What the heck? I can cover it up, right? Because there's no crying in acrylic. It's easy peasy to fix. Okay, there we go. Why not? I'll just outline the whole thing. Now we can bring some of the blue in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the blue um, full strength. Eek. If I were working with orange, you'd be doing the same thing. Okay. So I just happen to be doing a blue pumpkin instead of an orange pumpkin. But if you were using orange, you could do the same sort of thing. You could still use the purple for the shadows with the orange as well. Okay. So you would use your orange instead of blue, um, full strength, okay, to go around where the shadows are. Now I'm actually going to put some water on my brush so it's a little thinner because tube paints tend to be a little thicker. Let me see if I can grab a, a bottle paint like this, right? So if I'm using a bottle paint like this, yeah, right next to me, I have a Husky tool um, chest that I use for paint in my studio. So this is more fluid. Look, so I wouldn't need to be adding as much water to it with these little bottles like this as I do when I'm getting it from a tube. I want to be sure I'm keeping water in there so that the paint flows, okay? In these first layers. Later, when you get more toward your top layers, then you can use it more straight from the tube and get the paint to be a little more chunky. So what I'm going to do is the areas where it's going to be the darkest is where I'm going to put this full strength in here, right? So right around where those shadows are is where it's going to be sort of full strength. Pew, right here. And like this right here. I'm going to do that a little bit like that there too. Start to get that defined, right? Can you see what I'm doing here? And the nice thing about acrylics is that you can go back over top of acrylics with light colors. It will work to do that. If you just add white, you could put that over top of whatever else you were working on. Whereas if you've got say watercolors, you can't do that. Watercolors, you have to go from lightest to darkest. But with acrylics, you can do the lighter to the darker. I mean, I'm sorry, the darker, and then put the lighter, like the light highlights in later. Okay, so we're gonna go kind of dark here. So remember the light's coming from over here. So the other side over here can be dark. It's okay if this side is dark. The fact that I'm putting lots of water in here means that I can still see through it to that purple, which is good. Let's do it here. Oof, I gotta keep it flowing. Keep it flowing. Here we are. And then this other side right here is where the sun's hitting, right? So this other side over here is going to be the lightest right along here. So I'm not going to put the darker blue there. All right, I'm going to bring some of the darker blue in the middle here and in here. Okay, so you can begin to see where I've got lighter areas over here and then a little bit darker over this way. Now, just so that it can, I'll let this give that a minute to dry. That's the beautiful thing about acrylics, right? The acrylics dry so fast. Yeehaw. Okay, so I'm going to work on the stem while that's going on. So I've got some, uh, this is called phthalo. Well, they call it, yeah, phthalo emerald, but it's phthalo green, PHTHALO. It's actually phthalocyanine if you look at the label, but I call it, everybody calls it phthalo green. Okay, I'm looking for a color that I can kind of darken it with. Yee, where did my dark, dark, dark go? You know what I can do? I can probably put some of the purple in with that green, and that'll darken the green up for me. There we go. And then this is yellow ochre. So I'll throw some of that in there. So we've got the phthalo green, the yellow ochre, and just a touch of purple. So if I'm using purple for my darks, then anytime I want something that's a little bit dark, I can throw the purple in. Now, instead of using the round brush here, I'm going to use a flat brush, meaning it's flat across here, because it's easier if you're doing a stem, which is more angular than curved, if you're using a flat brush instead. So let's mix a little bit of that purple and green together. So we'll get like a darker green, and then um, some of the yellow ochre. Okay, a little bit more green in there. There we go. So let's put some of that along here. Ooh, fun. All right, that's actually a good green. That's a good green. And I want to be sure there's a little bit of water on my brush so that it's the paint flows and I can see through it so that that purple that's in there, we can see through the purple, right? Okay, like this. Yay. Okay, I just got somewhere I didn't want it, but it's not a problem because while it's still wet, I can use this is my favorite like corrector brush. It's the Velvet Touch Willows Blender. It's stiff, and I use this whether I'm working with watercolor or with acrylics. So I just got somewhere I didn't want it, so I just got the brush hairs wet, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick up that paint where I didn't want it because I want the wood to show through. And it's nice and stiff. This brush is the brush hairs are stiff. So you can do that. You can get in there and repair it. I like that green. Thank you, watercolor, etc. It's phthalo green plus a little bit of that violet and then some of the yellow ochre. Phthalo green by itself looks very I call it, it looks very synthetic. So let me show you. You see that right there? It looks very synthetic, that color. Ugh. So you want to mix it. It's your mixing green, and it works great with your yellow ochre or brown burnt sienna or any of your siennas. It looks great with them. So that is your mixing green is your phthalo green. Okay. So you can get a really nice. Oh, hey there, M. Franklin or Frankline. Welcome in, welcome in. I'm painting on a round wood panel, and they came in a set like this of 10, super cheap, but they're so much fun for the holidays. And there are a lot of tutorials out on YouTube that show you how to do like winter scenes and stuff on them. And we're doing a pumpkin since it's almost Thanksgiving. Okay, so now I don't know if you can see it. I can see it right here where I put the purple on the stem. You can see a shadow. So the fact that I used a little bit of some water on my brush so that this green was a little thinner, it let me the shadow's already there because I put that little bit of purple in there. Now I want to go back to my round brush because I want to put one of those curly cues, right? I want to kind of put a curly cue here that comes off the stem. Let's get some more of the phthalo green and this um, yellow ochre, and then a touch of the purple to darken it up just a little bit more. Okay, good. Eek. So I'm gonna I want the paint to flow off the brush pretty easily. So I'm getting the brush wet to be sure it'll flow off. And then when I have a round brush, I turn the head a lot. So I'm turning the head to be sure that the paint is on the end here. And then I'm gonna come off of here and little by little, I'm gonna do a curly cue, right? Because you'll see those little since they're a vine essentially, right? A pumpkin is a vine, right? And then so we've got our little curly cue. I could use a little bit stiffer brush, but I don't know where there is a stiffer brush, so this will have to do. Okay. Another thing you can do is you can always come back in later with an acrylic marker and just draw those in, like drawing tendrils and things with an acrylic marker. Love my acrylic markers. Okay, and then on this side, I want to put a leaf. So let's get a little more paint going here. Mixy mixy, right? Now this is the side where there's light. So I put a little bit more of the yellow in there. And then we're going to do a leaf. I'm just going to freehand it right here. Like I said, I could always come back in later with an acrylic marker and define that a little bit better. Okay, so at least we have some leafage going on. Let's do this, do this, and do this. Okay, fluffy, fluffy. So we've got a leaf back behind there. Now the leaf is a little more yellow. Remember how I said the light is coming from over here? So that's, I started out with the first layer of the leaf being rather yellow. Okay, so now I'm gonna go, this is dry. That's the miracle of acrylics, right? So I'm gonna take this lighter blue that came out of this. That's an Americana color. So I'm mixing some of the turquoise in with the light blue, or I could just use the turquoise and white. And then let's bring that in here. So these are the center parts of the pumpkin. And as long as I'm building it up in thinner layers, if I'm using water in there, then you're still going to see those other layers that I put underneath there, right? And you're going to see the shadows from the purple. There we go. I'm going to keep the water flowing. I like it too. Oh, love the leaf. Nice. Thank you. And then, right, as long as this blue is light, like it's got plenty of water in it, then these other colors are going to show through it. And you know what? I know that if you've watched me before, you've heard this before. It's okay if some of the background shows through. It's okay. If you're working on paper and it's showing through white, if you're working on this wood and it's showing through as wood, it is all okay. Okay, so I'm going over the down here also where the purple is. Just remember to keep your brush relatively wet so that the paint below has a chance to show through. Now I don't want too much of it over here because um, this area over here, there's really not as much light on, right? You see how sometimes I go in with my finger and I sort of squash things around, right? So there's that. Um, the part that's right back behind right here, that little tiny bit, is going to be in the light. The part that's back behind, if the light's coming from over here. So that's why I painted that one very light. And then these over here need to be more dark, which is why I'm putting it on, but then I'm rubbing my finger over it so it can kind of thin it down a little bit. So that's why it's good to put that art guard on first that I showed you earlier. You weren't here, Salmon's girl. Before I started painting, I used this thing called Art Guard. And so Art Guard is a barrier cream for your hands. And that way I can use my hands as I'm painting, and then I can go and all the paint will just wash right off my hands. Okay, so as we would say in the South, we're cooking with gas, right? Oh, ding. I don't know what that was. Somebody must be trying to message me. It's probably my daughter from Greece. That's whenever That's WhatsApp, I think, is she's trying to get a hold of me. Okay. So I know that I want it to be extra dark down here, and I'm putting some of that light color, but I can just come back and add some more of the dark color. Ooh, I like where it's going. I like where she's going. The cool thing is if I finished it and then tomorrow I looked at it and I was like, "Ooh, it needs a little tweaking here and a tweaking there." That's the beautiful thing about acrylic. You can just go right back over top of it, which is awesome. Okay. So over here, we want it to be a little bit lighter, right? There's a little more light over there. So I'm going to take some of the white and I'm going to add in some of that blue with it. So it's super light blue. And I'm going to bring that over here because the light is over here, right? The light is over on that side and a little bit up here as well, and a little bit over here. So I'm beginning to lighten up some of that area just by adding some white to that light blue. Now, when acrylics dry, they become darker. So it looks like it's really light right now when I first put it down, but as it dries, it could become um, darker than I want it to be. But I will, if it is, I will just add some more, right? I'll add a little bit more white to it. There we go. So you can begin to see that. And then over here on this one, there's going to be a little bit of white here, and a little bit of white in sort of in the center here. And use your finger if you want to. Okay, so we're beginning to see where the light is on that. And that's giving it a little bit more dimension. Now I want to go with a little bit more of the darker over here. So I'm going back into the turquoise blue right here. And I want plenty of water with it. So it's kind of almost like a glaze, right? A glaze is when you have a thin layer of paint. So I'm going to come in over here more with the glaze, and especially down near the bottom where it's going to be dark, right? It's going to be darker near the bottom where it's touching the down here. But I'm glazing it. I'm glazing it. So I don't want it to be too thick at this point. There we go. I'm just bringing a little more dimension in, which is just another layer of that blue. See how we're getting a bunch of dimension out of that? It's cool. Cool. Okay. I'm going to let that part of the pumpkin dry right now and work on the leaf a little bit more. Okay. As well as maybe the stem. Like the very top of the stem right here should be kind of brown. So if you didn't know it, you can take yellow. So this is my yellow ochre, and you can put purple and yellow, and then it turns it brown. Okay. So I wanted something a little darker than the yellow ochre. And so just adding a touch of purple to it gives me a darker, richer brown. Okay. And so I'm going to just touch that to the end right here. So it looks like that's where it was broken off, right? Can you see that? Where it was broken off. Okay, and then maybe I'll put a little bit of brown on the bottom of the leaf because maybe some of the leaf was beginning to get crunchy, right? So what am I doing? I'm putting some of the color on the leaf and then I'm just dabbing it with my finger so that you get a little bit of the brown effect, but not too much, right? Yes. I love getting my fingers in with my artwork. Now the end of this, see, I'm turning my brush That's how I make sure that I've got the paint all the way through there. And I'm just going to dab a little bit of that on the end of this because I feel like the end of that little guy is going to be brown, starting to turn brown. Eek. There we go. So that's turning brown, and the leaf has a little bit of brown to it. Whew. Now, I like where the pumpkin's going. I like the pumpkin itself. And of course, at the bottom of the pumpkin, we want to have a little bit of a shadow, but we'll do that last. Let me, right now, I want to put some lines into here. So, like I was saying, you can use an acrylic marker to do extra line work. Let me see what I have here. Hmm, I have, this is a Pebeo acrylic marker. That's a little harsh. That blue is a little bit harsh. Let's see what else I have. I actually have a Posca pen here in white. Let's see what happens when I put the white on there. Remember, no crying in acrylic, so if I don't like it, I can always go over it. Let's see, how do I want to do this? I think I want to bring it like this. So you can do it with white, you can do it with black. Right? To kind of just give it a little bit of extra zhuzh. What if I bring this over here and I'm like, oh, that's where like it's really white is hitting it right there, right? Now this is an acrylic marker. This Posca pen is an acrylic marker. So it's okay if you use it on your acrylic artworks, okay? So let's just do a little of this, a little bit here, just sort of giving it a little bit of a, that way you know, guess what? The sun's coming from over here, or the light is coming from over here. Let's bring this down just a little. There, right? Now that white, if the white dries and it looks too harsh, the way you fix it is you just add what? A glaze over top of it, right? So if I go, ooh, that white is like, ooh, too muchy muchy. After it's dry, I can just come in, let's say with the leaf, and I can grab some more of that green over here. So I'll just grab, you want to use transparent colors. The nice thing about any of the phthalo colors, there's phthalo blue and phthalo green. If it says phthalo, PHTHALOCYANINE, that's phthalocyanine. Any of the phthalo colors are transparent. So if you want to glaze, you just use a little bit of water and that transparent color. And then what I'm doing is glazing right over top of that white because I'm like, ooh, that on the leaf is too muchy muchy. But I just glaze right over top of it. And when I do that, you see what happens? It pushes it back a little bit. Which is like perfect. Okay. And I want to push the white that's on the blue here back a little bit too. But the blue that I'm using, this turquoise blue, if you look back here, oh, sorry, it's right here. It tells you what the pigments are that are in here. So the pigments are PW6. Guess what that is? White. PW means pigment white. 6 is titanium white. And then PG7 and PV 15:3. So that's phthalo blue, titanium white, and PG7 is this phthalo green. It says pigment PG7. So I'm always looking at the pigments to see, what am I looking at there? Okay, so if I take, let me see if I have a phthalo blue handy or not. No, that has PW6 in it. So if you want to create a glaze, you want a color that does not have a PW, meaning a pigment white. All right. You don't want a pigment white because pigment white means that the color's more opaque. Okay, so it's going to cover an area instead of glazing. So this is primary cyan. It's PB15:3. That's phthalo blue, and it's transparent because it's what? A phthalo color, right? PHTHALO, phthalocyanine. So if I put some of this phthalo blue out here, it's fully transparent. It's awesome. So these fully transparent phthalo colors are great for glazing. And let me get, oh, I want most of it. I just want it to be very watery right now. Very, very watery. See how strong it is? Holy kashmoli. It's super, super strong, which is why I want lots of water to go with it. Okay. Lots and lots and lots of water. Because I just want a tiny bit to do a glaze over some of that white. And then we'll see. Now, believe it or not, a lot of times painting is putting something on and then taking it off. So let me just glaze the whole thing real quick, like I'm gonna glaze the whole thing because I just love this color. And then you're gonna take your paper towel and then you're going to lift it back up again. That's what glazing is. See how I took a lot of the color off, but some of the color remained. And so, what the glazing does is the glazing helps to unify everything. And if you look at that white now, those white marks that I made, they're not as in your face as they were before. They've got just like the teeny tiniest bit of a blue glaze over top of them. And so now they actually match the whole aesthetic of the whole thing. Same with the white up here in the leaf. You see how the phthalo green, that PG7, is transparent. Um, Most of the time, if you have good artist grade paints, it'll tell you on the label if they're transparent, semi transparent, or opaque. So most of the time they'll have like they'll either say it in words or they'll have a little symbol. So you see this little box that's white, that means that it is transparent. If it's like this is yellow ochre, and the block like that is black like that, that means that this is opaque. Okay, so that's, that can help when you're like, what can I glaze with here? And so that will help you with that. Now, I like where this is going. I'm not completely happy with it because now to me it's too unified. And I'm like, wait a minute, no, I want to see more strokes. So I'm just going to come in here with a little bit more in this brush. And I'm just going to, you know what? I'm going to put some strokes in because I want you to be able to see the strokes instead of it being so um, all homogeneous in one color set. Which oftentimes when you glaze, you then go back in over top and put more stroke work in. Okay, that's just as you do more of the painting thing, then you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I need to come back in and show more of the hand of the artist, which is just adding more little marks, 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 marks. And then you go, okay, now I can see the brush strokes. That makes me happier because now, yes, I glazed and I pulled it all together, but now I'm beginning to see brush strokes again. Okay. Whew, this is like narrating my process, right? Ah. Okay. Now, the last thing is I want to put a shadow on it. I love that the wood shows around it. Isn't that beautiful? That's why I love using the clear gesso that I was showing you earlier. This clear gesso. Oh, because then you can see the wood. But the wood is protected, the wood is sealed. There's not gonna you this will be an artwork that will be um it'll last for 100 years. Okay. Even if the particle board here gets wet, decays, goes away, whatever. This piece of the birch wood on top and this painting will last 100 years. That may not be your objective. So don't worry if it's not your objective. If you're looking for something that you're okay with it being more temporary, then it's fine to just paint directly on the wood with acrylics. It's fine. People do it all the time. I like to seal it and do all of those layers because I want to be able to either enjoy these things myself, give them as gifts to family members, or sell them and have the confidence to know that they're still going to look fabulous 20 years from now. Let's see, watercolor, etc. Oh, oh, watercolor, etc. said they pressed something on their phone and they think they went to a different dimension. They got lost and they just came back. Yay. Okay. So now we're going to put a shadow in because we defined where the light is coming from over here, right? And ooh, actually, I can see that that leaf needs a little bit more of the yellowing down in here, a little bit more of that brown so that it gives it a little more dimension. Come on, brown, you can do it. There. It just needs a little more dimension on the leaf. Um, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that purple and I'm going to use some of that phthalo blue because that phthalo blue, oh, it's so beautiful. Now I'm going to use a little bit smaller brush like this. It's still a flat brush, but I'm going to use a little bit smaller one to get in here to put the shadow in. So I'm going to start the shadow with this phthalo blue, and the shadow's going that way, right? So we're just going to come in here and drop in the shadow, and then the light's going that way. So that's why I'm stopping it a little bit short here. Cool. So we've got a shadow going on. Usually there is a little bit right there where it just touches, right? Okay, good. Yay. So we've got the phthalo blue first, just a thin layer, just so we can kind of see where we want the shadow to be. Um, Again, because I put gesso on here, if I said, "Oh my gosh, it went too far. I don't like where it is," I'm using that brush I said, the Willow's blender, and let's say that I feel like it came up too far, then I can just use some water because that the wood is sealed, right? I sealed it with the gesso. So that gives me options. If I had not sealed the wood, I would not be able to do this. The paint would have soaked into the wood and there would be no coming back and repairing it. You know what I mean? Like repairing what you felt might have been your mistakes. There would be none of that. Okay? But because I have gesso on here, I can come back with a stiff brush and do my corrections if I feel like it. Nice. So I just pulled that back down a little bit, right? Now there's a little something right there, but I don't think that that was this layer. Oh yeah, it was. Okay, nice. Stiff brush, thank you. I'm gonna come in here, get that little bit of extra off of there. Once the acrylic is dry, you're not gonna be able to pull it back up. So you definitely wanna fix things as you see them. And I think I'll get to it later because there won't be a later. Once it's fully dry on the surface, it's going to be permanent. Okay, there we go. Okay, I likey better. All right, now I want to go in there with some purple because I just love working with purple. Where did my little brush go? Here it is. So we've got our purple over here, right? So what I'm going to do with the purple, usually when you have a shadow, it's not just one color. It's the darkest nearest to the object, and then it gets a little bit lighter and a little bit lighter, right? So I'm just going to bring some purple in here. And this is the phthalo blues uh, most of the way dry. So I can just bring my purple in, and then as it goes, the light goes like this, these are going to get a little bit longer. There we go. Right. So now we've got it just a little bit. Now, because I'm playing with it, it's beginning to lift it up a little bit. You see there? Let me get a little bit more of that purple, a little thicker, a little bit thicker. I just want to put it a little thicker right here. Come on, thicker, thicker purple, thicker, thicker purple. There we go, like that. So you see that? So what happens is that grounds it, that takes it and that firmly sets it on top of whatever surface that is sitting on. Okay, there we go. Nice. I like it. Okay, so I like to let my artworks sit overnight, 2 days, a week, and then come back and look at them and go, oh, you know what? I really need a little bit more of this or a little bit of that. Like right now, I can see I definitely need more purple in these areas here because it got kind of lost once I started putting all the other stuff in, right? The little sections that separate these parts right here. I sort of need to go back in and just add them back in a little bit more, just a little bit, right? So that I can bring back the that separation between the sections and the dimensionality of it, and maybe put a little more, just a dusting of purple down here, just to show that it's really dark over there. Okay, so now I'll leave it, and then tomorrow I might go, oh, you know what? I need a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that. Maybe if I add a little bit. So it's okay to come back on your acrylics and just add more layers. Then when you feel like you're done, when you are in fact completely finished, then you're going to want to seal it, right? You're going to want to put some sort of sealant on it. Yay. And I had shown y'all earlier that I like to use, there are two things that I like to use. This is a reworking varnish. So this is by Krylon. It's called a Kamar varnish, Kamar varnish. And this is what I use as a sealant. So it says non-yellowing protection for oil, acrylic, and watercolor. Um, Allows easy rework. So if you feel like, okay, I want to seal it, and then I'll see if I want to maybe add more, then I just give it a quick one or two coats of the Kamar varnish. And it doesn't, I don't find that it really, like, it doesn't say here whether it's gloss or satin. It just seems like a very innocuous, like it doesn't really do a lot to change what it looks like, the coloration or anything. It might on watercolor. If you spray this on watercolor, the watercolor does intensify or get a little bit darker. So just bear that in mind. But I haven't found that to be true with acrylics. And then when you're ready to do your final varnish, this Krylon Gallery series UV archival varnish, especially since I live in Florida. UV is a big deal, that you want your artwork to be protected, your colors to be protected from ultraviolet light, okay, from the sun. So this is the UV archival varnish, and it comes in gloss, and I believe the other is satin. It may also come in a matte. I'm not sure, but the one I happen to have is gloss. And what I like about it is it protects acrylic, watercolor, and this is interesting, oil, pastel. So people are always looking for what can I seal or what can I spray my oil pastels with, because oil pastels technically never dry, right? Like a regular oil paint. But this one you can put over top of your oil pastel to seal and protect your oil pastels. Isn't that cool? Colored pencil and oil paints. So I find this one to be amazing because of all the different things that it covers. And then it also gives you a UV UV protection. And then it also says here removable for conservation purposes. Wow. So if your artwork is 500 years old at some point and a conservator wants to repair it, they can, which you may not care about. I don't like working with oil paints at all, Salmon's Girl says. Oh my gosh, Salmon's Girl, I love oil paints. Ugh, they're so creamy and so dreamy, and they glaze like, oh, so amazingly, but they have a smell, and you have to use solvents with them other than water. So I get it. I completely understand. Even though I love oil paints, I don't paint with them very often. So that might tell you, it's like, yeah, I love them, but I don't paint with them too often. Um, Yeah, so I like where this is going. I will probably go back in and play with it a little bit. I love the way that the glazes here over top of that green leaf, and the glazes over here over top of the marks there. I like the glazing that's taking place there. Of course, I'm going to have to figure out, how and why to put my signature on there too, but I'm going to look at it a little bit more over the course of the night and decide tomorrow or the next day if I want to add to it. I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will. I'll add to it. I'll put a few more marks in there. Um, in order to make it more finished in my mind. Um, I love that pumpkin. Thank you, Salmon's Girl. Yeah, like I said, I've been seeing a lot of people painting blue pumpkins recently, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do that. I haven't done it. I've done the orange pumpkins, but I haven't done the blue pumpkins. So I thought, that'll be fun. So at the next workshop, I'll show you the finished piece. It'll be finished, it'll be signed, it'll be sprayed and ready to go to a new home or not. Maybe I'll just keep it here for the holiday or take it to my daughter's house, whatever. Right. Oh, the nice thing about using this kind of palette, which is a tearaway palette for doing acrylic paint work, is that you just take this. Let me make sure these are thin, so this actually is 2 sheets right here. So you just take it like this, and then away it goes. Oh, Jasmine did a pink one. That's cool. Was it on the raid train yesterday, Salmon's Girl, or was that oh no, Jasmine, your niece. She did a pink one. That's cool. That's cool. I love it. So if you didn't know what I was working on top of, there it is, the Strathmore palette paper. I like to get I get the one from Arteza, I get the one from Blick, and I get the Strathmore. So whichever one happens to be a good deal, that's the one that I grab.